So what I'd like to talk about this morning is what I'm going to call generosity of spirit. And I have a little quote that I'm going to access here and read. To act generously is to awaken a certain kind of freedom, freedom from the stranglehold of self-concern, and consequently, freedom to choose a level of responsibility beyond the minimal charge most of us have for ourselves. And that quote is from a book called The Bodhisattva's Gift by Dale Wright. I'm going to read it again. To act generously is to awaken a certain kind of freedom, freedom from the stranglehold of self-concern, and consequently, freedom to choose a level of responsibility beyond the minimal charge that most of us have for ourselves. I'm going to start out talking a little bit about Steph Barragato. As most of you know, the Barragatos, Steph and Margaret, were my teachers, as well as, well, Deborah at least goes back there, and had the privilege of studying with them. And I've mentioned this before. Steph had, the last 4 years of his life, he had pulmonary fibrosis. And something I knew nothing about until he had it. And then I found out what a really horrible disease it is. Because what happens is fibroids start growing in your lungs and taking up the space. And so little by little, you suffocate. No other way to kind of put it. You just can't get the oxygen in that you need to survive. And so Steph went through this for 4 years before, at the end, his heart simply gave out. It was working so hard trying to pump oxygen that it just couldn't keep up anymore. Which, frankly, I thought he would probably end up suffocating, which I thought the heart attack was probably a blessing. A blessing, and you know, and he was remarkable, so remarkable. You know, I've told this before. It's worth telling again. He was in the Zendo like 4 days before he passed. His focus, his intention was so strong that he got himself there right to the end of his life. And for those of you who haven't been to Treetop yet, the Zendo is on a second floor. The only way that you can get to the Zendo is up a flight of stairs. Hopefully we're gonna, it's a perennial issue that we've been talking about, because sooner or later that's not going to work as we're aging as a sangha. But anyway, and Peter Harris compared his journey to the Zendo to climbing Mount Everest over the years, because he literally would have to take, he had to carry a big tank of oxygen, and well, the tank kept getting bigger and bigger as the disease progressed. And he'd have to take a step, and then he'd just put the mask over his face and breathe, take enough breath, get enough oxygen to take another step, and so on. Just like the climbers on Everest. Monumental. And the other thing was extraordinary, that he could out-chant anybody in the Zendo. I don't know how he did it. He could chant so loud and so powerfully, and yet he couldn't, take a step without the oxygen. So he was a remarkable human being in many respects. But one of the things he said once that really struck me, he said, the worst part about being ill is that it makes you think about yourself. The worst part about being ill is that it makes you think about yourself. And that really goes to this whole question of generosity of spirit. Because to have a generous spirit, we're turning the focus around. not on ourselves, but on other beings, both human beings and wild beings, right? We're turning that focus around. Instead of being preoccupied, Steph was not, he struggled, but he was not preoccupied with his health. He was preoccupied with everybody else's well-being. Everybody else's well-being was more important to him than his own. And that was quite conscious and quite deliberate on his part, I believe. And I'm sure it took an extraordinary effort. Because those of us that are aging, which is many of us, encounter that same thing in kind of in slow motion, right? And we have illnesses and aches and pains and all sorts of things. And those want to draw us in, want us to be preoccupied with ourselves. And it often works that way. You know, how many older people that you know, main topic of conversation, oh, my hip is this, my back is that, it's like, well, yeah, they are. That's what it is to get old, right? But aging and illness and things like that can rob us of our generosity of spirit, our concern for others, our involvement with the well-being of others, our willingness to help others. Ideally, as we live the Bodhisattva vow, none of us is going to be Shanti Deva. None of us is going to be, well, I should say none of us. I'm not. You may, but you're going to be totally selfless and completely devoted to the well-being of others. But hopefully, as one of the essential aspects of our practice is that we're going to cultivate this generosity of spirit, that we're going to keep as best we can focused on others, focused on the world, focused on many things that are going on in the world, and not on our own aches and pains. You know, and I mean, it's tempting to do that. If I've been thinking lately that, not today, I was thinking about this. I thought, I'd love to write a book about the medicines for the disease of our times. And one of the medicines for the disease of our times is generosity of spirit. We are so lacking in generosity as a culture, as a species. We have so focused in on me and mine. Not always been that way, right? In earlier cultures, that was not it. It was the clan, it was the tribe, it was the extended family. We had a kind of a big circle of people that we were involved with, that we cared about. And we've gotten down to the nuclear household, maybe even smaller in some cases. So that's one of the really significant ailments of our time, is we lack that. I've talked a little bit about my experience at the Parliament last month, and I keep coming back to it myself frequently because it was so remarkable. And one of the most remarkable aspects was that there were 7,000 people there, and everybody was open and generous and caring and loving. And what an experience that is, to be with humanity like that, not having to be defended, not having to pull back into my shell and protect myself because I was afraid of being wounded in some way, But just to be out there, every time I encountered somebody, I was smiling. They were smiling. It was a remarkable testament to our capacity as a species that I don't know, I'm not gonna say we've lost it, but we don't utilize it. You know, we don't allow it to come through, partly because we've defensively, right? We get wounded out in the world. And when we get wounded, we put up walls, we put up barriers, we create defense mechanisms. We pull away. We separate, right? When we talk about non-separation, one aspect of it is living in that generosity of spirit. You're not my adversary. You're not my enemy. You're not somebody I need to guard myself against. I can be completely open and I can give of myself freely to you. That's an amazing feeling that we have so seldom in the world today. You know, I mentioned the Sikhs, and I mentioned that they served lunch to the entire community. And when I say served, I mean they really served. They came and they brought food to the table, and they kept, trying to feed you. And it was an amazing experience, right? It was amazing. And that was generosity, amazing generosity. They didn't get a dime for it. They just saw that as part of their mission. I know very little about the Sikh. I'm exaggerating if I say I know very little about the Sikh religion. I know less than very little. But what I saw is that's what they see themselves doing, is feeding people, helping people, selflessly. That's what selfless is. That's what generosity is. That's what non-separation is. Giving ourselves to the world, to others, to other people, to other beings, without the thought of what am I going to get in return, right? That's the other thought that we have so commonly. Well, if I do this for them, what are they going to do for me? Right? We're told that this is some kind of a zero-sum game, right? And if we give $1, we got to get $1, or the equivalent of $1, or whatever it is. Instead, we just give. And then that's the other thing. So you'll get some spiritual perspective. Well, give and it's going to come back to you. Don't worry about it coming back to you. Give. That's generosity of spirit, not about coming back, not about getting rewarded or this life or the next life or on the planet Xenon. Just give. Give of your hearts, of your spirit. I'm not talking about our wallets here. Well, I'm not excluding that, but I'm talking about our hearts, our humanity. We can give something as small as a smile. We can give something as small as a hug. It doesn't have to be something with monetary value. It's just acknowledging somebody else's humanity, their life, their suffering. That's non-separation. Not pulling back and protecting ourselves, but giving ourselves. Now, well, before I segue to this, so I just want to, do any of you happen to watch the Playing for Change, little Playing for Change songs and videos? If you haven't encountered that, encounter it. They're in YouTube and all over. And what they are is some sort of a collective that creates music across the world, and they do it simultaneously. So you're watching a piece of music, and there may be somebody in California who's leading it off, and then there's people in Africa, there's people in Asia, there's people in South America, all over, musicians coming in and playing on the instruments that are indigenous to their culture, if they're not one of the cultures that uses the modern Western instruments. And these are so touching. It's so beautiful. And they have everything from, many genres of what I would call popular music. And the musicians are wonderful. I mean, they're very talented musicians. It's good music. But what's beyond that is this idea, you're just seeing these faces from all over the world, and lots of clips. They do these things like in the street in places in Africa. The kids are in the street dancing, and the whole community gets involved. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But in one I just happened to watch, there was the leading musician. In which each one there's usually a leading musician, and then there's all the other people. And in this one, the leading musician was a street musician, a busker somewhere in the United States. I'm guessing California. Man had an extraordinary voice, beautiful voice. And so he was in the street in some kind of like a little shopping plaza, mall kind of a thing. And while he's playing, children are coming over and dropping money in his, whether he has his guitar case or whatever he has for people to make donations. But I'm sort of imagining, why is it the kids coming over? And I'm thinking, because the kids have natural generosity of spirit. And they see this guy playing there, and they say to their parents, Mom, Dad, what's he doing? Why is he playing music there? And they say, oh, he's trying to get some money. Oh, can we give him money? And so, because nobody told them, don't give him money. The guy isn't working, and he isn't, he isn't a worthy human being, and all of that. It's just like, oh, yeah. Kids don't even think twice. Give them the money. Right. That's the spirit. That's the spirit. That's the generosity of spirit. We have that when we're young. And then we're told, oh, that's naive. That's too generous. Oh, you're enabling them. Right? But all the things that we get told about that. And so we know, I mean, not that there were no adults coming over, but it was more kids. It was very interesting. So what we need to do, in part, is be aware of the narratives that we play in our heads that obscure that natural generosity. We need to be aware of those narratives. What are the tapes that come on that tell us why we shouldn't do that? All the good reason that we should just let that person be and not help them. Now, there is another side to this. Somebody brought up in Dice on this week. What, I'm helping so many people that I'm drained. What do I do about that? And in the case of this person, I know that's true. Their fault is not generosity. Right. And so they need a little self-protectiveness. And that's okay. It's like I said, generosity also means we give what we can. We give what we have. We give what we're able. We're not Ryokan taking the clothes off our back and handing them to the thief. That's a wonderful parable. That's a wonderful example, but most of us aren't going to do that. And that's okay. But we give what we can. We give what we have. We can give that thief an acknowledgement of their humanity, that they're not a piece of shit, which is probably something they've been told their entire life. I don't have money. I can't give you anything, but have a good day. Acknowledging humanity. Giving from our hearts doesn't mean tangible possessions necessarily. It doesn't preclude that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that either. So we give what we can. One of the things I believe we will find that just like Steph able to walk those stairs when I believe any physician would have said it was absolutely impossible for a man in his condition to do that. That we will find that we have reserves we never knew we had. That as we keep that generosity of spirit, we cannot give it all away. We can never give everything, even if we try. But there are times everybody gets tired, everybody gets burned out, everybody gets frustrated. Then we need to back away a little. We need to rest. We need to take care of ourselves. We can't help others if we're sick or exhausted. But like with everything else, there's balance. There's balance. But we can give from our hearts, from our spirits, always, always. The question should always be, what do they need? What can I give them? How can I help them? Again, maybe my wallet is empty. I can't give anyone money. But I can still give them the smile. I can still give them the hug. I can still acknowledge their humanity. I can still listen to their story. Listen to their story. That's what therapy is. People pay $120 an hour or whatever it is. Have somebody listen to their story. Sorry, Robin, I'm giving away the secret here. Oh, but that's what people crave. That's what they need. That's what they don't get in our society. Just as simple as somebody listening and caring. Listening and caring. We don't need to be millionaires to do that. And we could do that 100 times a day in every encounter that we have. Or you can make an appointment with Robert. I'm sure he'll find you some space in his schedule if you'd like to do that. But no. But, we can do it 100 times a day. We can do it on the line in the grocery store, right? There's no limit on the places that we can be open, that we can care, that we can listen, that we can be kind, that we can be generous. Generosity of spirit. That we can smile. I tell you, I regard myself as so fortunate to have had that experience of going to that parliament, and and they move all around the world. I think they're about every 2 years, and so. But they have an association that goes on all the time, and I've decided I'm going to join that association because they have different events and things that go on around. And I don't know. They're debating, I think, where the next one is, and it might be in Spain or it might be, I don't, But if it's someplace that's accessible, I'm going to go, and that I can afford, and I'm still here and healthy. And I encourage anyone else to just, it's such a wonderful experience. And that means that, that only happens like one place in the world every 2 years. That should be happening every time we go to the Stop and Shop, or, the doctor's office, whatever. We have that capacity as a species. Thank you.